Settings to all. I guess I can just say that. Let's see. We have screen with audio. We have and let's see. Was there default? Let's see. It's the USB. Now it's the desktop. Microsoft Live Cam Studio. Okay, so now we've got audio on that. We've got audio on that. We've got audio on that. There are ways that you configure this so that no matter what I'm focused on, there's a kind of a strip up the side of the screen that's got all the comments on it. There's so many things that you can do with this. Let's go back and first when Joe Mercado was there, KG7JM, Ryan V, Cam McClelland in Saskatchewan, Alan, Ken Pooler, and Demorst Autosport, Steve Ash, Russell, Darren Poole, William Meyer, Ryan V, Ken Pooler again, J. Ken DeBlanc from Victor Echo 3, SSB, Luis Reyes, Hello, Chad Tunis, John Kohler from Arizona, Phoenix, where the weather is probably perfect right now. Although I was hearing from the old tech guy that he was sensing some pretty cold weather down there. He was down in Yuma. And K04 LFT, soon to be WW4DY. Good. No audio now. I think we've got audio. Is there a way I can operate multiple radios on one end of a feed line with multiple antennas on the other? Yeah, there is, if you're on different bands. Usually you are going for an antenna that's multiband, and you want to share it on the different bands with the radios, and you can do that over one coax. What you need are these splitters that will keep each of the radios out of each other's way. They're not cheap, but you can get them from DX Engineering and so on. Okay, I think I have audio now on the overhead. Okay. Let's see. Why the oxygen cannula? Well, I still needed a little bit. One of the problems with being in a wheelchair has been absolutely zero exercise. And that's got me to the point where I am completely out of shape, and I've gained a lot of weight. So right behind this desk with all the equipment on it is a treadmill, and I'll be using that. I do have some very, very good news. The foot has healed. I was able to dump the boot. In fact, it's still in my wife's car out there. I dumped the boot, and now actually just wearing real shoes. It's actually a little weird to get used to it. I mean, this just happened yesterday. And I'm kind of swaying from side to side a little bit as I'm getting used to walking again normally. So I am out of the wheelchair. I got my real chair here with me. The wheelchair has been folded up and stuck in the guest room for any time I might need it. I also found the battery for this light. This light provides just a little bit more there. Found the charger for it. It was right there, right where I can touch it. And it was down with some other chargers, and so I didn't see it. But we've got all that squared away. Let me get the little pens for the whiteboard in case we need them. And yeah, the foot is healed. Talked to the doctor yesterday. He showed me on the x-ray where across where it had broken there was bone that had grown out to protect that spot right there. I guess when there is a fracture, when the bone grows back, it actually grows bigger to make that stronger, and then gradually the body will adapt that back to the normal thickness. But that's very good. Yes, the foot has healed. Greetings from Plymouth, UK. Thank you for the info you put out from KG7WHD in Boise. Magic Man for Ann. Good evening, people. Victor Alpha 7. Lakewood, Colorado. Gig Harbor, Washington. More active PSK these days. That's nice. I like that. Dave just got a hotspot, and it's programmed to transmit on 438.8, and I'm worried that I might need to change it. No repeaters on that frequency and no traffic. What you can do is look up for the frequency plan for your area and your state. Is it for 440? It's different in every state. 2 meters is pretty much a national band plan, but 440 is kind of state. So find a little used simplex frequency and change it to that. If it came pre-programmed, there is a way that you can log into the device from your web browser and change whatever you need to change about it. Idaho, antenna 8010 off-center fed. That's one I have and have tested. Works very well. Somerville, South Carolina, Chase, Kansas. Much warmer here now in northern Illinois. That's good. Our temperature right now is 29 degrees Fahrenheit, and in the room here is a little warm at 73. Okay. I got a very nice email from the guy I did yesterday's video about trying to look at different ways he could put trees up. This is the second one of these I've done now, where I use Google Earth and we take a look at the property from above, from around the street, different angles and so on, and say, well, we could use that, we could use this, we could use that. And it seems to be kind of a popular way of doing things. So happy to do that. Let's see, Optical Man Jeff, KE0KRO, just bought 1948, 49, and 50 CQ magazines from K0JY in Montrose on QRZ. Can't wait to read them. His name is John. K0JY. Not sure I know him. I know somebody with a similar call. But that's good. Those old magazines are interesting to look at, especially the construction articles. First of all, a lot of ham radio back in those days, of course, it was all tube. A lot of people constructed their own rigs from projects in CQ and in QST and in ham radio and in 73, the four ham magazines that existed back then. And the nice thing about these was, they'd usually work, but they were actually much less technical from the point of view of going back to basics and getting serious design equations out of the textbooks. They were more along the line of, well, usually this grid leak resistor is a mega, this kind of thing. But they did fine. They put together some really, really good rigs. Andy says hi. Sunny Sacramento, Southeast Michigan, Western Penn. Good evening from Ohio. And good. And Benjamin Otto says, hello, everyone. Don DeGidio says hi. Getting warmer in Philly. Great. Absolutely great. Well, let me tell you a little bit about what's been happening to me. I am still working something with the ARRL, but they won't have things ready to go until the end of February, which is coming up real quick. So I will announce it in this forum when we get to that point. I'm out of the boot. My ankle is officially healed, although it's a little weak, and I was going to need some exercise and stuff to kind of get that all straightened out. I just need exercise. I've gained 20 pounds. I don't show my thick side here. I need to dump that weight and get going again on the treadmill. There was a point, but when the pandemic started, I had been doing pretty well with exercise. And, the pandemic kind of hit everybody and threw everybody off their normal schedules. And I stopped doing all the exercising and stuff because I was getting to feel pretty good. Let's see, flying. The airplane is back in the hangar. All the fuel lines have been fixed. All the pitot and static lines have been fixed. That rudder cable has been fixed. So my flight instructor and I are going to take a look at it tomorrow. Probably fly it in the pattern a couple times. And then bring it back down and make sure everything is just perfect the way we want it. And then we'll go back up and fly it some more. So I'm very, very happy to be flying again. Here it is, the end of February, and this will only be the second time I have flown this year. So you can't get a pilot's license by sitting on the ground. You just can't do it. So James has contributed $5 to the channel funds. Says, thank you for the technician videos. You are certainly welcome. Those are available for free online. Make sure you go to ke0og.net/training to get, let's just do that screen, and we'll go over here to this page here, technician class M license, online help for your self-study. And it's got all the videos listed here with the current links for the 4th edition videos. Okay, so you can look at the current ones. I need to have my assistant take the old videos down. because I think that there's still people linking to them and so on. They need to link to the current videos here. So let's see. Yes, the tech videos are there. Do I need physical therapy? The doctor was ambivalent on that. I told him, let me try walking on it for a while and see if I need some physical therapy. He gave me some ankle strengthening exercises that I could do. I will probably do a lot of walking. Dave, is your ARRL series going to be in On the Air or QST? I'm not writing a series. I had an article published in QST recently that was on, basically it was based around one of the amateur extra videos. And the league has asked me not to make any announcements as to what I will be doing. With them but it should be within the next week or so we get the paperwork signed up and going on. Okay. Let's see, former owner of a Cessna 182. I started to learn to fly in one of those, but it was way too heavy to learn for light sport. So my airplane is in good shape. In theory, I got to go up and look at it tomorrow. I am still looking for a tow bar for that thing so I can push it back into the hangar and steer it with the tow bar, because if you just push on the propeller, the thing the front wheel on that thing wants to caster rather terribly. So I called Rands. They were very unenthusiastic about helping me. I called Sporties and My Pilot Store and Marv Griffin, and they all went, we really don't know. So I may have to make one, I guess. We have a friend down the road who's a welder. Okay, so I am 75 in San Jose. I have seen it 100 in the San Fernando Valley in January. 100. It was amazing. From the Boot Heel Art Tech class, it's going to be very good. Have to drop out for net. Okay. Wisconsin State ARES VHF net is done, and now on to the Augie live stream. Well, nice to have you with us. Charles Pooley says he's glad to have me back on my feet. So let's see, I talked about the airplane. Oh, the other little thing. I got my COVID-19 vaccine yesterday. This is the first of two. It's the Moderna vaccine. Here in Uray, there's only 4,500 people. So the county health department, which consists of 2 people, has got some help. There's a Air Force guy who was there in his Air Force uniform. I couldn't tell if it was Colorado Air National Guard or it was the U.S. Air Force. I wanted a chance to talk to a fellow Air Force guy, but we never did. They were too busy. But I had registered online, which was no problem. When you've only got 4,500 potential customers, you're not going to kill a website like some of these are. And got registered in there, and they called me and says, we'd like to schedule you for tomorrow. And I said, I will drop everything, everything, and go get the vaccine. So we got that, and we are already scheduled to get in 4 weeks the second. A lot of misinformation out there. Okay, there we go. I don't know. My wife says she's not using the internet, so hopefully this will stay up. I keep saying I've got to call Danio, and I don't. I need to call Danio and say, we got to do better than this. James, KI50EB, scored 100% on his tech and has now started his general study. Good. Felipe points out right rudder will be good physical therapy. It will, because you need right rudder in order to take that airplane off. It needs quite a bit of right rudder. Better understand your enthusiasm for aviation. I've recently developed an obsession with the possibility of powered paragliding. I know it's something I simply must undertake. There are quite a variety of ways you can do powered paragliding. You can get the thing that looks like just a powered parachute, or that looks like one of those weight shift kinds of things that are powered. You can do that. There's also the one that's the trike. It looks like a trike from the top, but it handles with a normal yoke. And then there's the Aerolight, Aerolight 103, which seems to be extraordinarily popular. I don't know why, but lots of people are making videos about them. I'd love to try flying one. But I've got my little Rands S6, and yeah, I'm very excited about it. I can't wait till tomorrow. Okay, good rudder, PT, yes. Does the plane have heat? Yes, it does. There is cabin heat for it. It's something that surrounds the exhaust pipe and brings hot air into the cabin. Aircraft spruce, your friend the welder, are your best options. I think I did call aircraft spruce too. Hello from Missouri. Seuss on the Loose got Pfizer. And let's see, good evening from the MS Gulf Coast. Mississippi Gulf Coast. Just received my general license. Congratulations. Been watching and learning. He's KI50AM. Optical Man Jeff. Just found out my company is closing because of COVID-19. So I guess I'm retiring in August. Any advice on the transition? Kind of scary. It is. I got a bad performance review from IBM, and I figured, okay, they're setting me up to let me go. So I went through all my finances very, very carefully. Budget. I built a simulation for what would happen with my savings based on various scenarios in the stock market, and looked at all that, and I went, I can retire. I could retire. It'd be tight, but I could retire. What I did not take into account was YouTube, because that was 2013, and the YouTube channel was nowhere near as big as it is today. And then I went back to my boss and says, hey, wait a minute. This performance review you wrote assumes I'm a full-time employee. I'm actually only working 4 days a week. And he goes, oh my goodness, no. Oh, let me fix that. So they fixed it, and then I got a good performance review. But I turned around and said to him, I'm retiring. It says I had to check my finances to see if I could retire, and I can, so I am. And they tried to keep me on, which was flattering, but I did retire. The biggest problem at first was my wife didn't want me in the house so much. And it just takes a little getting used to. I'm so busy right now, I wonder how I ever had time to work, but I'm busy. I'm sorry to hear that you're going to be retiring before you really had a chance to think about it. Be very flexible. Give yourself space. Anything like this can cause moments of depression, so give yourself space. And the best thing to do is activity. Go find people you can have breakfast with, whatever. Should I tape or seal the ends if my ground radials to keep them dry or directly exposed strands to the ground? They can be exposed to the ground. If you do have pets or something like that that can touch the ends of that, you might want to put either seal them or put wire nuts on them or so on. Okay, hello from Maine. Hello, Robert. Love your information full. Looking at antennas for a tiny city lot with power lines nearby. Looking at a flagpole antenna or a center-fed half-wavelength doublet, a dipole, I guess, and no ground plane. Well, if you do the horizontal antenna, you don't need a ground plane. Hello from snowy Colorado. It has been snowing. We've actually had very little total snow, but it's been so cold that it just stays on the ground. It started melting today, I tell you. And I could actually see little bits and pieces of the ground out in the backyard. I'm waiting for it to all go away so I can put on my mud boots and go out and fix my step-IR antenna and get the right antenna up, put the reference station antenna back up, and do a few things like that. And I've got sitting over in a corner over there by the door, I don't think you can see it, but there's a little isotron antenna for 20 meters that I want. Yeah, want to VE when I can, and you'll be able to do that when you get your extra. You can as a general, but you can only issue tech licenses, whereas an extra you can issue tech, general, and extra. Okay, Grand Rapids, Michigan. Retirement is highly underrated. It is actually pretty nice. If I look at the amount of time that I put into the YouTube channel versus the amount of money I make, I'm certainly making a lot less than I was when I worked for IBM, but it helps me pay for flight lessons. Whenever there's a piece of equipment now, I don't go bother somebody to get them to loan me something. I just pay for it, and that way I can give it a nice, fair review. In general, now that little orange radio from Radioddity, they did send that to me. Okay, very happy to be retired. Yeah, nose dragger. Yeah. Yeah, I don't need a battery operated when the airplane is not that heavy. My problem is not pushing it. The problem is steering. Because if I try to push it backwards, it immediately goes to one side or the other. Because that front wheel casters. And it'll go over, it's not a complete caster all the way around. It's only a partial caster. So it'll go over to the side, and then I'm steering the, if you've got a big left-hand turn going or a big right-hand turn going. And oddly enough, you don't pull it back to where it goes. You have to push it further to get it to uncaster. It is very strange. Okay. High amp capacity power supply can fry low power equipment, especially radios. It depends on what kind of power supply you're working with. If you're working with something like a Golf battery charger, yeah, I wouldn't trust it very much. But like a ham radio 45 amp power supply can power a couple radios without a problem. Howdy from El Paso. One day you can demo an old-fashioned grid dip meter. I actually ordered the parts from MFJ to turn my little handheld antenna analyzer into a grid dip meter. And I just haven't used them. I need to learn to use them. It sounds like something good to do. The DX Commander also needs to be built. It is partly built. It's out in the snow. And nothing's going to hurt it while it's out in the snow. Saw a picture of an Ed Fong PVC J-pole on a pickup. Is this wise? I don't think they're made for high winds. I mean, you get on the freeway and you've got a 75 or 80 mile an hour wind. And I don't think they're made for that. Just built an ESR meter in my retirement. Felipe Lewis says he's putting $10 into the channel funds and says, grateful for the channel and the fellow Augies here. keeping the art of radio alive. Don wants to retire and move away from all the noise. I'll tell you, where we live out in the middle of nowhere. It's a little tract. There's several homes near us, and I feel much safer that way. If there's a fire or something like that, somebody can come help. But it's so quiet. Oh, it's quiet, and it's radio quiet. It's about S1 or S2 quiet, that quiet. It's really very quiet here. And let's see. Oh, HF noise. Yes, that too. Good morning from the UK. Yeah, it really is morning there. It's 2 in the morning. Yeah, I forgot to set up next week's last week. So I'll do that this week for sure. The guy claimed that if you have several power supplies plugged to a large radio, if you, for example, run a 20 amp radio, that you might fry your QRP low amp radio. That seems very strange to me. I would not worry about that, but I've always supplied my QRP radios with batteries anyway. So all Diamond aircraft have cast-ring nose wheels with a similar connection system as you have. Bergstrom Aviation in Pasco, Washington. They build a rather solid bar. Thank you for the tip, Mike. If you have interests that you find enjoyable, retirement can be very good. Yeah, you can't just stop working. You've got to, the human body is not designed to just live. It's got to live for something. Live for something. And so you got to have something to live for. Otherwise, you'll be dead in the air. Some of the aerospace companies that used to take so much out of a person would keep them busy all the time, way beyond their normal hours. They found that their retirees were dying early because they weren't transferring. They didn't have hobbies that they could go to. I was fortunate that when I retired, I had ham radio and I had a YouTube channel to keep up. So I've just been working on that. How has the pandemic affected ham testing in general? It has slowed it down, that's for sure. However, what has speeded up is the ability to test online. And if you go to, hamstudy.org, there are lists there of where you can take a test online. There's all kinds of lists of things you have to do preemptively in order to do that, but you can do that. You test online. And that has really jumped up quite a bit because of the demand for it. Our club is doing sessions. We have the basement of the Masonic Hall up in Cedar Edge. It's a very large basement. It's all one big giant room. So people can socially distance in the room without problems. Other people have held their VE sessions outside. A little hard to do right at the moment with so much cold in the nation. But if you're in the Southwest, or Florida or someplace like that, you can do that. Just ordered a Zygo G90. It's a very nice radio. I've got one right here. I've been playing with it, but I haven't given it a full review yet. Bio-NO battery, that will work very well. It's your POTA rig. Yeah, I'm going to do the video on POTA. But before I do the video on POTA, I've got to get out to the trailer, which is snowbound, because that's where my X5105 is and where my buddy pole is. So I've got to go out and look for those things. Okay, genealogy bug, absolutely. A lot of people do that. Okay, this is KD2GUM, past general, want a radio to connect on 40. Check out dcasler.com/reference. That's slash reference. That will take you to the reference station. HOA development depends on your HOA, whether they will allow you to put up like single wire or maybe a vertical antenna at a corner of your house or something like that. Some people do attic antennas. Each HOA is different. But you do want to do definitely 100 watts. Okay. Please send us any snow junk. Well, you can have all the snow in my backyard. Took my test outside under a tree. The wind kept blowing my papers around. Yeah, I can imagine. Kevin Laughlin. Yes, that's the old tech guy. Just moved back to Quartzsite for, I don't think he'll be there this summer. A recent video reported S0 noise level. Yes, yes, and then it's a good place for it. I don't think there's so many people down there this year as before. Okay, so yeah, there are some of the different VECs, volunteer exam coordinators, testing quite a few people. And the FCC has just recently released a request to see if we need more VECs. The big one, of course, is the ARRL. The next big one is W5YL. But ARRL was quite slow to get its online testing up. And some of these others, I think, have just kind of pushed ahead and made it work. Because from the beginning of the VEC, this was put in there for Alaska, but was not limited to Alaska, was the ability to test remotely. Because there's so few people and they're so spread out, and trying to get across to Alaska, about the only way you can do it is by bush plane. So they have developed protocols for doing the online testing. Twitch radio is here. So you were on, popped in to say hi and smash the like button. Thank you. Some of my friends only live 6 months after retiring. Too many 70 and 80-hour work weeks. Yeah. This is one reason that I went to 4 days a week 4 years before I retired. And I put my foot down about travel. I said, I'm sick of travel. So they were very good to me. I've got to say this. Whatever you say about IBM, they were very good to me as a bipolar employee. They bent over backwards to help me be productive. And they put up with a lot of sick time and having to, deal with it. It's pretty stable now because I've got, one of the things that I do is keep a pretty stable, steady life. But IBM was great at doing those things. But the last 4 years, I only worked 4 days a week. It was about all I felt I could. So, okay, let's see. We've got Club VE team is jam-packed with new hams. Great, great, great. Yeah, people, I think the pandemic has caused people to become interested. Brian V said he took his test with the CPU on the toilet in the bathroom. Actually, that's quite common because the bathroom is one room that you can make, quote, sterile very easy. There are no bookshelves. There are no drawers full of calculators and stuff like that because you have to use your camera, pan all the way around and show that there's nothing in the room. And you need to lock the door and not let anybody disturb you while you're doing it. The rest of your family needs to understand that. And then they can put the test on your computer and it can tell if you look at other stuff on your computer, but it works really well. So it's been working. Glarga's biggest, the team, yeah, but the bathroom's a great room for that because the bathrooms are usually very functional, and we don't keep ham radio books in the bathroom. We don't keep computers in the bathroom. So it's a very good way to be completely clear. Okay. Well, that's what I need. So it's nano VNA. I know. The nano VNA, if you know what you're doing, is a great little thing. But man, you've got to be an expert at making those things work. Have so much fun in HF that I'm ignoring studying for my extra. Well, I'll tell you, Marshall, after you've had about a couple of years of it under your belt, and then you do get your extra, it'll mean a lot more. My brother and wife never made it to retirement. That's too bad. Do you think D-Star will still be around in 5 years, given the popularity of DMR? Yes. Nothing ever quite dies in ham radio. I think DMR is eventually going to take the win the race. I don't think it's the best sounding of the digital methods by any means, but there's a organization in Colorado called Digital Colorado or something like that, Colorado Digital, that has a connection, so you can come in there in DMR, D-Star, or System Fusion, come in any one of those ways and cross-connect and talk to each other. And I see that happening a lot. There are places where everybody's on Yaesu, or places where everybody's on D-Star, other places where everybody's DMR. The thing is that the Chinese radios are all D-Star, and they can't do System Fusion because that's proprietary to Yaesu, and they won't do D-Star because that's Japanese. And you got to understand that in Asia, there's a lot of politics. And in World War II, starting in the early 30s, the Japanese invaded China. And a lot of the time we thought was the 30s was recession for us, was actually wartime over in China as the Japanese moved in. The Chinese to this day have not forgiven the Japanese. So they just won't put anything other than DMR in their radios, because DMR is something that is open that they could put in there. D-Star is open too, but you won't see the Chinese manufacturers manufacturing D-Star radios except under contract for Kenwood. If you buy a Kenwood handheld, it was probably made in China, but it does D-Star. Okay. So, you know, there's politics everywhere. We think our politics are terrible. Let me tell you, it doesn't matter where you go. They're terrible. Enmity going back centuries. As an old child of the 60s, drives me nuts. Okay, David Main's ICOM is behind D-Star. D-Star was put together by the Japan Amateur Radio Club, the JARL, as an open standard. And I think it was ICOM jumped on that. Kenwood came later. Could be the other way around. Okay. So, rotary spark gaps. Oh, yeah, where'd that come from? Local club had their biggest local meeting prior to and after I tested, I showed, and there were 8 others in the first live local meeting in months. They were very welcoming. Oh, that is so good to hear. I have heard of people say that they are using my my videos as part of club meetings. You're welcome to do that. If you record your meeting, I would prefer that my video on your website be embedded. Use the YouTube embed code. Okay. If you do that, you're welcome to do it. You don't need my permission or anything if you use the YouTube embed code. And you don't need my permission to show any of my videos at your club meetings. I did a video a while back about how to grow your club, and that's been a popular one at club meetings. And I've heard from some clubs that are following similar programs and patterns, and then they're doing very, very well with it. I'm getting into ham radio. Would you recommend the GD77 handheld? It's a nice little handheld. It's not terribly expensive. It's getting a little long in the tooth. It is DMR. I like mine. I have one and I like it. Okay. How do you one-legged raven? Licensed in 65, gotten really bored with FT8, gone back to my roots, CW. Good for you. Yeah, Lythan mentioned some of the problems with in the history of Asia. I was IBM along with about 350,000 other employees. I don't know Leo Minervini. On Alaska, Washington. Hello. When did they change over from broadband spark transmitters to ones that had crystals and controlled frequencies? That is an interesting story. Maybe I ought to tell that story in a video. Spark, the people who were financially invested in Spark, meaning people who had big rigs, the Marconi Company, and all of these others who were heavily invested in Spark, fought CW tooth and nail. And CW was when tubes came out and you could make little oscillators with them. And most of the power in the oscillation they could put out on the air. And so with a little rig like this, you know, with a transformer, a rectifier, an oscillator, and an amplifier that you could build for 20 bucks, which was a lot of money in those days, and key it, it would be on one frequency. Now, you'd get a lot of chirp. Instead of da, 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 it'd be do, 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 do. But that's chirp. And then there's all other kinds of problems that those early transmitters had. But the thing was that 25 watts on CW was worth 1,000 on Spark, because on Spark most of that energy is just absolutely wasted. Plus, Spark signals are very broad in frequency, even when they started doing what they call damped waves and things like that. It was very broad. This took place around 1920 to 1925. In that period of time, the American Radio Relay League pushed CW very hard. CW stands for continuous wave. Spark was a so-called damped wave. They were able to make their Spark transmitters put out a wave at one frequency, but it would diminish. It would be a damped wave. And then the next cog would come around and you'd get another one. And so you'd get this buzzy, very buzzy broadband signal there that was called a damped wave. And the opposite of damped, like D-A-M-P-E-D, damped, the opposite was a continuous wave. They didn't have the problems of all the damped waves. And this is where CW came in. And we still call it CW to this day, although these days it just means Morse code. Back in those days, it had a very profound and very political meaning, because there were fights on the air between Spark and CW. People said Spark is king. CW said Spark is ancient and out of date and needs to go away. Went through the same thing when we went to AM to single sideband. And I can sort of remember some of that from my youth. But, and then when we went from tube to transistor radios, there was a lot of resistance to that. So anyway, the stories are very, very, very interesting. I'll have to put a video together about that. Let's see, hundreds of FT243s, those are the crystals. Now that's another whole story about crystal control versus variable frequency oscillators. If you had your general, you could do a VFO. As a novice, you were stuck with a crystal. People wonder where that came from. Yes. I need to know, what does he rate the GD77 radio? It's fine. It's a nice little radio. It's a very nice little radio. It's light. It's lightweight. It's not very expensive. I think it's around $100. It's easy to program. So, okay. Poor Mike. He was told he couldn't use a scientific calculator. Actually, you can. Scored in the mid-90s. Hey, you only had to have 70. You had 20 extra points. 20 unneeded points. Think of it that way. Okay. Dave Morning, the one-legged raven. A night owl in the UK. Yes, I would say it's 2:30 in the morning there. Seems at narrowing the bandwidth of the transmissions. That was the big advantage to CW. Okay. Is this live? Yes, it is live. Can you make a video about the transition to NewTek Spark to CW? You know, I should do that. I've been doing a lot of videos where I can do one video a day, which means I don't have a lot of time for research, but as much research as I can do in a day. But maybe I'll, start working some plans on these, because that would be fun. Oh, DC to AC, and then there's the 50 hertz versus the 60 hertz. You could go down to Los Angeles in the 1930s, and depending on where you lived, which one of the there's many cities there, which city you were in, you had either 50 hertz or 60 hertz. Then finally, the powers that be forced 60 hertz. And the companies would buy up all your old clock radios, give you new clock radios that ran on 60 hertz. The rest of the world largely does run on 50 hertz, but 220 volts, 50 hertz. The higher frequency is much more effective for transformers. Transformers can be physically smaller. I've never understood the resistance to change in technology when the new advances are obviously better. Oh, why is the United States not on the metric system? We're still on British imperial units that even Britain doesn't use. I've heard some people call them freedom units. We lost a Mars rover once several years ago because one subcontractor was using metric, another subcontractor was using imperial, and it didn't work. You've got to measure velocity in meters per second or miles per hour. You've got to specify all that. And the one I like is when you measure velocity in furlongs per fortnight. Okay. Which first transceiver was completely solid state and in which year? Oh, well, the Yaesu FT101 was mostly solid state. I think that I've seen some Kenwoods that came out as solid state, but they were touchy. And you had to be very careful not to, they didn't have the appropriate protection against transmitting in the high SWRs. All the new radios have that, of course. Alrighty. Tubes can cope with high SWR much better than first generation. Spark was easy to do. Let's see. Country has its own metric threads, a mess, yes. How is the horizontal MFJ loop doing? Well, I have, I put the loop back together. That's in a recent video this past week. Put the receive only loop back together. It's sitting in the guest room waiting for the snow to go away. The mile and kilometer markers on the road. Yeah. How's the horse? It's okay. Now it's past 7:30 and I haven't done any questions here. Let's do some questions. Okay. This is from Tim Johnson, who I did the video on, was it yesterday? Where we looked at his house and what he could do with different things. He says, David, thank you so much. I'm honored. And because I told him I turned his query into a video. Let's see, we've got a new one right here. This is from KD2GUM. Following you for years and finally passed general 2 years ago. Congrats. And now want to get a quality radio that will do 20 and 40. Do not like the handheld or CB-like units. Budget grand to 1200 and a nice antenna that HOA will not crow about. You commented on your live show. Come here, retired accountant. Okay. Go to dcasler.com, DCASLER, one S, no T, DCASLER.com/reference. And let's just do that so we can watch it together. Okay, dcasler.com/reference. Whoops. dcasler/reference. Okay, this is KE0OG's reference station. Now, the point of a reference station is it's something that's there for reference. It's there for use. You can build your station like it. You can depart from it if you want. But here's the reference station for general and amateur extra. Okay, the HF radio is 7300, and you can see my video on it right here. Power supply, Samlex SEC 1235M. It's 13.8 volts, 30 amps. Coax, RG8X, RF connectors, UHF connectors, PL259 SO 239. Power distribution from your power supply. It's got the West Mountain radio rig runner, power connectors, Anderson power poles, antenna MFJ 2010. It's an off-center fed dipole. I've got a video about it. It does 40 and 20 and 10 and 6, and it's 66 feet long. Now, there are alternatives if you need something that's not so long. I did a video on that. Grounding, lightning surge, bonding, CW straight key, digital mode software, logging software, and so on. Okay, so there you go. That will get you a complete station. If you follow that, it is a station that's probably close to being in your budget and will give you what you're looking for. Optical Man Jeff threw $15 into the channel funds and says this is the best night of the week. So much fun to hear from you, Dave, and everyone else. Thank you. Crystals are still in very wide use. Yes, all the radios have crystals in them. 5S. Okay, there's a crystal in here. There's a crystal in every radio. And what they do is they use a lot of mathematics inside the radio to convert that one single frequency into any other frequency they want to within about a hertz or whatever they need. Modern radios are within a hertz. In other words, you can synthesize from that one frequency. You can divide it by 2 and then divide it by 3 and take the difference of the results and all that sort of stuff. You can make or manufacture every frequency in 1 hertz increments. You can't create one in between, but you don't need to. So 1 hertz is probably overboard. My Yaesu 747 GX was 25 hertz. Every notch on the dial was 25 hertz. People says, oh, it's terrible. Oh, it was fine. I had no trouble with it at all. Let's see. GD77. Yes. Only one country put a man on the moon using SAE. Yeah. That's the Society of Automotive Engineers. The problem is anyone who has done any work on their car knows that they need both American and metric tools. I bought a couple, Harbor Freight tool assortments to take up to the hangar to deal with things on the RANs. It's RANs S6. It's got it's an American airplane, but it's got a Jabiru, which is a Australian engine. Australia means metric. So you're going to have both to deal with. And everybody knows you got to have your metric tools. You got to have your Americans. So quantum computers, do they have a place in the future for ham radio, for software-defined radio? Maybe. It's going to be many years before they really get those things working. Nuclear fusion, the fusion of hydrogen into helium. It has been the power source of the future for the last 40 years and will be. And they're putting all these projects together talking about what they're going to do with their nuclear fusion. And my reaction is I will believe it when I see it. When somebody is able to confine fusion for an indefinite period of time and draw the heat out from it and use it to run boilers. Okay? Casler says that will never happen. And what was the other one? Oh, it was metrification of America, I think. Okay, why do you need a power supply when you can plug it into the wall? Well, you don't, but you can't. The radios these days all need 12 volts. Now, if you buy a radio like the 200 watt Yaesu 9,000 or 5,000 or whatever it is, that will plug into the wall, but most radios do not. Now, the old Yaesu FT101B that I have up there will run on either 12 volts or 110. It's got a really interesting power plug that's got all kinds of little cross wires in it so that the right power supply works. And it uses the same transformer, basically indifferent regarding what you're using. It's really cool. But most radios today run on 12 volts. Okay, Whitworth. Oh my God, Whitworth. When I worked at the motorcycle shop when I was a teenager, they had Nortons there. They had the Norton Commando and one other Norton. And they used Whitworth tools. Whitworth tools were based on the shank size of the bolt, whereas SAE is based on the head size. Like if you go for 1/4 inch hardware, that's the shank size, but you use a 5/8 wrench with the head. Okay, well, in Whitworth, if it was a 1/4 inch shank, then your wrench was marked as a quarter. What's going on? Excellent connection. That says no connection. Now it says green up here. Okay, sorry about that. William Myers, K8GIM, says, thanks, Dave. Besides spending time with my wife, then my job, this is the best part of my week. Well, thank you. I've got to tell you that I I enjoy this time of week very, very much too. Okay, let's go to another question here. Okay, we talked about the reference station, so we'll put that one away. Bruce Bittenbender says here, many people talking about grounding, questions how to create an artificial ground. One which is a tuned counterpoise. The artificial grounds are actually counterpoises. Will it create an artificial ground? Is it an electrical ground or an antenna ground? It is not a ground at all. It's a counterpoise, and it's live with RF. So make sure that whatever wire you've got in there, what you do when you tune it is you're tuning it to be an electrical quarter wavelength. Now, the rig sees it as a ground. There will be 0 volts RF at the radio. Will it work on second floors? I would use this as a last resort kind of thing. But even just throwing out a wire, connecting it to the ground terminal radio and throwing out insulated wire out on the ground, kind of straight-ish, can often help you very much. Does it really help with weak signal reports because of extreme ground losses or radiation pattern disorders? I don't know. So what's the good, bad, and ugly of artificial grounds? Well, sometimes it's the only thing you can do. Otherwise, it's bad or ugly. You've got this wire out on the floor to be tripped over, and the end of that wire, if somebody touches it, would be very high voltage. Plus, every time you put it out, your wife is going to make you put it away when you're done. Every time you put it out, it's different, and it'll act differently. So that is kind of how I would reply to the artificial ground there, Bruce. Okay. Oh, this is a long one. Oh, he's giving me some good ideas for my 50 ohm video, why it was such a hit. Theoretically, a 100 watt PEP signal needs a 750 ohm resistor to dissipate the heat, giving a 75 to 75% loss. What are you talking about? Oh, the terminated dipoles. These are not actually dipole. Avoid using the term dipole when you're talking about what are actually wave antennas. Wave antennas work best when they're terminated in the characteristic impedance of the antenna. One example of a wave antenna is a rhombic. A rhombic is unidirectional if it is terminated in its inherent impedance. If you don't terminate it, it's bidirectional. So what you're doing is putting half your power into that resistor. Now, the reason it's still such a good antenna is because it is so very good at being directional. It has, I did antenna analysis of a rhombic one time, and I mean, it was like an 8-degree off the horizon beam primarily was extremely low. Now, I don't like these terminated antennas. There are people who are starting to sell them and call them as being a good answer to a dipole. Don't forget that anything that hits that resistor isn't radiated, except as heat. So, if it works for you, fine. I've seen a lot of description of them. I actually spent a little time looking them up. There's not much written about them. I've got both the ARRL and the DARC Deutsche Amateur Radio Club. I've got their antenna handbook too, and looked up these terminated antennas. First of all, they're not dipoles. A dipole is a resonant antenna. They are wave antennas, and they work on an entirely different principle from the way a dipole works. But some people think they're wonderful. I've got to say this: if you put a 50 ohm resistor across the output of your radio, you get a 1-to-1 SWR. So, let's see. Okay. Steve Pullman, KF7ZFC, says, Dave, have you had articles on the MFJ 1788 or mag loops in general? Yes. I have tested. One was made by a hobbyist. I don't know how he did with his company. He was going to start a company to sell it. And one was made by Chameleon. The Chameleon one works just fine. The MFJ one works fine. The MFJ transmitting loop will take up to 100 watts. So you'll have to go into my videos on my channel page, which is youtube.com/Dave Casler, DAVECASLER, all one word. And then search the channel for magnetic or something like that. And you should find the 3 transmitting loops, which would include the Chameleon, the MFJ, and that one whose name I can't remember. They were just thinking about forming a company when they started. That would also do 100 watts. And Chameleon makes a couple different loops. I tested their P loop. And then the MFJ receive only, of course, I've tested. Plus, I've tested one other receive only loop. Now I did not ever test the Alex loop, but I met Alex at Dayton in 2019, and he gave me a neat little device you can clip on the antenna to determine when it is in tune. And it's a pretty cool thing. He said it was $7, and he said they were going to be distributed at DX Engineering, so maybe possibly there. So Steve, I hope that answers your question there. And let's see what we've got here from Jason Perrone. Why can't you use a ladder line or window line in place of coax? It seems cheaper and very low on the line loss. And you absolutely can. And a lot of people do. Now, using this instead of coax comes with a set of problems. One of the biggest problems is getting it in and out of the house. But MFJ makes a device you can put in your window that's got 2 connections, and then there's 2 connections on the other side, so you've got a pass-through for that to go through. One of the problems, too, with ladder line or window line coming into the shack is unless the antenna is balanced perfectly, the transmission line will tend to radiate. And it will quite happily radiate right in your ham shack. So that's why I like to have coax going out a ways and then connect it to a balun and then do ladder line the rest of the way. Can you use ladder line and window line exclusively? Absolutely you can. Absolutely you can. And a lot of people do. And if you have an antenna that tends to be a bit weird to tune, and so you need a wide range tuner in the house. All the wide range tuners, I don't have a tuner sitting right there. All the wide range tuners have a built-in balun, so they'll feed ladder line directly. Okay, hope that answers that question. Now we have Jim Sexton, KO4BEG. I recently watched your modeling the simple inverted V antenna, number 102. Boy, that was a long time ago. I just put up 375. I'm going to put up an 80-meter inverted V. Sounds good? I've been discussing this with some of my fellow hams, and one or two are mentions I should subtract the length by 5% due to the V shape. Not necessarily. I cannot find anything in the literature on this. I don't think I've seen anything in the literature on this either. So I thought I'd ask Dave. Well, I would say probably not. However, when you make your inverted V, use, down at the end, I like to work with insulated wire. It's just easier to work with, but you can do this with standard wire too. First of all, make sure that the ends are high enough in the air that somebody can walk under them without garroting themselves. What I usually do is I'll go up a tree about 8 feet and tie around there, and then use that on the connector and on both ends, so both ends are up kind of high, and then get the middle up as high as I can. Now, cut it slightly long, and then when you tune it, wrap the wire down through the insulator and back, and wrap it around the other wire. Now, even if it's insulated, the antenna will see that as a shorter wire. Okay? Now, when I did the infed half-wave 8010 from my antenna, I ended up wrapping like 2 feet back, and I could have gone more. And I did have it in an inverted V configuration. So the formula, 468 over L, 468, L equals 468 over lambda, the wavelength in megahertz, and then the result is in feet. If you're going to do that in metric, obviously the numbers are different. I did a little derivation from the metric to the American in a recent video. But anyway, you're going to be adjusting that length anyway to get that on the part of the 80-meter band you want. Now, an 80-meter inverted V will cover up to a maximum 3-to-1 bandwidth of about 100 kilohertz. So if you want to do digital down at the bottom, like FT8, you're going to want to make it extra long and then tune it for that. If you want to do, say, the general part of the band for drag chewing, you could go 3800 to 3900, 3900 to 4 or anywhere in there, but you're not going to cover the whole band, not with a dipole. In fact, I did a video on why that is true fairly recently. But I would not worry about subtracting the length, because what you're going to find out is you're going to end up having to lengthen it. So you're going to have to solder some wire onto the end, which is a pain. It's a lot easier to put the wire through and just wrap it back. And then if you change your mind about what part of the band you want to be in, you can change it that way. Hope that helps. Okay, this is from William Noble. Can you go into more detail or a plan on how you built the base for my hex beam? We're out of time. Tell you what, I'll make that a video. Because it was pretty cool what my friend did for that. And it's something that you can use something like that yourself to make a walk-up type situation there. So I'm going to go ahead and print that one, so that I'll make a video about that, because we're just about out of time. Let me go back to the live streaming tab, and it looks like somebody else, William Myers, put some money. Ready Kilowatt promised us unlimited home electric from a water heater size reactor. Yes, you can do that. House would be a little bit hot. Okay, let's see. Many thoughts in pixel blocking. Yeah, I'm going to talk to Danny O'Farnese. He's the guy who runs Wi-Fi Elite, and say, look, I can't even get a decent live stream out. Since you've already asked your ISP file an online line, oh, I don't want to mess him off or get him angry because he is a friend, and it took some persuasion on my part to even get the internet down here. So he uses my house as a relay point and doesn't charge me for it. So okay, can you model the loop antenna with antenna modeling software? Absolutely you can. Yes. Short answer, yes. Okay. Well, the thing is that ISP knows if I really get mad at him, I'll make him take the stuff down off the top. And then there's several hundred customers they can't serve. So, and I've done that once or twice. Okay, very good. Okay, yeah, we're getting down to the end. We're overtime, and you know, it's like being at church. You love hearing from the preacher until that 1 hour mark hits, and then by golly, you want to get out of there. My wife used to say she grew up Methodist, and they were on the preacher's case to be done by noon so that they could get the seats in the restaurant before the Baptists got out. So, anyway, time for Starlink. Oh, that'd be interesting to look into now, wouldn't it? Thank you all very much for sharing your evening with me. I have really enjoyed it. And until next time, 73.